Thanks for the invitation from ThingsCon to participate. Today I'm here a little bit to talk about the design mindset and the collaboration between designers and developers, especially more on IoT or the background I come from for the last years. So as Max kindly introduced me, I'm Ricardo. If you want to reach me, you can reach me via Twitter. And I'm also one of the hosts for ThinkCast, which is a podcast that I started with my beloved engineer, and we just pop a beer, invite some guests from different corners of the internet, and have like a relaxed conversation about society, technology, and whatnot. A little bit of the background, and I will introduce a bit Futurize so you guys can understand. We are a digital agency, and we are spread around Europe. I'm mostly from the Berlin office. At Futurize, we work like all together. So we have like business developers, software developers, and designers. But there is not so much silos, and we work collaboratively. But there are some challenges, and that's what I'm here to talk about. As a company or as our mission, we see ourselves as digital disruptors, and we try to help out other companies, especially the old school companies, to become digitalized and to become more agile. Before I start talking about the problematic, I want to make like a quick retrospective about the story of the internet. You probably know this better than I do, but I still want to do it. So from the first email sent from 71 until now that you can control mostly anything from your smartphone, it's been like quite a fast evolution, and I think we are still dealing with the growing pains of that. As consumers, as people who are building a connected world, we still don't know exactly what all of that means and what's the best ways to do it. And actually, for example, if I think about ThingsCon, it's for example, a movement that is trying to discover how can we do that more ethical. And more movements we need that for that kind to develop. So this is a trend researchers framework for the different phases of the internet. So they start with the web of content, the web of communication, then we go for the web of context, and nowadays we are on the web of things, so where everything is connected. The next step is the web of thoughts, which they say that is coming, but we are already there. I will show you some examples later. So the web of content, you can imagine like TV and radio was still a network. So but the only difference is you were just being content fed. You were just in one end of the spectrum. You didn't have any control of the content. But when Ray Tomlinson actually invented the email, we started to have like a digital communication that goes both ways. Which brings me to the web of communication. This one is very close to my heart because I grew up with it. I was 11 or maybe a little bit younger, and I finally had like internet, and I plug in the modem behind my parents' back so I couldn't access the internet. But we have IRC, so you can communicate with everyone everywhere, from China to US to North Pole. You can contact people, and that empowered people to discover what the internet was about and to connect to other peers. You also meet a lot of weird people at that time because it was a little bit of a wild, wild west of digital space. The web of context is more like about the immersion, like people living in the machine, like Second Life, World of Warcraft. You can get more immersive when people die in front of the computer playing because they didn't eat or they didn't went to the toilet, and then you have the respective people going to their funeral online. So you live and die in the machine. So this is what they call the web of context. The web of things is where we are now. Everything is connected to the web, from your smartphone, from your smart car to your coffee machine to your sex toys. Everything has a chip and it's connected to the network. The next one, although they say that we are not there yet, we are somehow. So is the web of thoughts, like human 2.0 and the enhancing of cyborgs. Neil Arbison is the founder of the Cyborg Foundation. Is by himself is considered as a cyborg in the UK. He has an antenna connected to his brain. The first iteration of this antenna was for him to recognize colors because he was colorblind. Nowadays, the antenna has a couple of iterations, and he can actually have receive some more information through vibrations. I cannot enter too much in details, but it's quite an interesting project. The cool thing about this, and also the strange thing, is that this movement is being kind of developed a little bit on the underground. There is a lot of conference, there's a lot of things happening. How these people can get their implants and their surgeries is still a mystery to me, but certainly not in the next hospital around the corner. So I wanted to do this retrospective because this is changing the way we work. It's dramatically changing the way we design things and also we develop. And I think companies, for example, like Futurize or other agencies and startups, we are trying to figure out how we work in this connected world. As for designers, we are not pushing pixels anymore, and this is kind of a big difference and a big shift that is happening in the design world. Like if I think about myself, I've studied analog design, print design, and now I needed to learn about digital stuff, and now I need to learn about the digital part connected to the reality and the physicality of the world. So we are not pushing pixels anymore or also creating products. So for product designers who are just used to design a chair, nowadays that chair is connected to the internet. The usage is going to be completely different. Therefore, the design process will change. As for developers, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm just a humble designer here, things have changed. Your software doesn't come in a package anymore, so distribution is mostly free via app stores and Play stores, etc. Open source democratize a little bit the process of developing software as well. And probably the worst part of the developer's job is now integrations, because when you have like your software in a CD, you cannot do so many integrations. But nowadays, it's part of your daily job, and it's probably a nightmare. An update. We can update and correct the software over and over again rather easily. So combined with this change in paradigms on the design side and on the engineering side, and we also see like the rise of new technologies coming up, like AR, VR, conversational interfaces, and so on. This is a challenge. We are discovering these new mediums, and this is new territory for everyone. We are all discovering new ways to approach these problems. So how do we do it a little bit in Futurize? So in Futurize, we combine, as I said, like service design with UX development and business all together, and everyone has the same level and the same impact. And our process, because any agencies has their own process, we have this one. So we start with a business idea or a business problem, then we go for a service vision sprint where this is the more intense phase. We have like the business guy, the designer, the final user, the customer, the tech lead, always working on a big vision that we tried. Oops, something went wrong. Okay, technology always fails when you most need it. So bear with me. There you go. So in this intense phase that can take like 2 days or 2 to 3 weeks, you have the business guy, the designer, the final user, and the customer in the same room working hard for a big vision. And based on that big vision, we try to design an MVP to launch, so we can start working and start learning if we did the right choices or not. This is where the magic happens, where you have everyone together from the 3 perspectives. And in theory, looks like that. In practice, looks like that. And I have a personal story with this engineer. That was the people that I hated the most when I joined the company and the people that I love the most right now. We have kind of a marriage relationship. But I try to understand why is that happening, because our case is, okay, it's a specific case, just 2 people, can be just a problem between the 2 of us, but actually it's much broader. And the more you explore IoT, the more, for example, from the design side, you need to work collaboratively with your engineers and your developers. And yeah, we are also a weird kind to work with. So I made some research and some surveys in the company, because we are quite many, and also interviewed some people, and based on my experience, those are the outputs that I want to show. So why is that? why is these relationships not working sometimes? So those are the 4 top reasons that came out. The first of one is respect or lack of it. Second one is lingo. We don't get what each other says. Mindsets, which is my favorite one, and definitely music taste. And I work for a Finnish company. There is a lot of heavy metal. So the first thing is kind of the respect. It's as easy as like, don't be an asshole for both sides. So on our survey, for example, this came up over and over again. And engineers are not taught of what designers are good for. They are probably not educated in school to collaborate with designers or what design is good about. And we have the same problem in design schools. On the designers on the other side, it's kind of, yeah, they don't trust me. They don't respect me. Like, I'm just a guy who does beautiful things. So there is this big mix match between expectations. So a personal story. Eric is one of our iOS developers, and at a certain point we were developing a redesign of a radio app, which I love. We both love music, so we had our very strong opinions. At a certain point, he started to challenge all my design decisions and all my design solutions, and I got really angry. I got to the point it's like, look, you are just a developer, just code that. I'm the designer here, I'm making the best design possible ever. Funny thing happened, the customer chosen his choices, his solutions, and I need to swallow my pride and also learn from that. And then I understood that kind of, even if you are in your own domain, you need to give a little bit space for other people to contribute. And oddly enough, Eric is one of our best hybrids. So he's an iOS developer and a kick-ass UX designer. That was a big lesson and a punch in the stomach for me. The lingo is getting out of your own silo. I can't quote developers on this, but designers, we all love like personas and wireframes and user journeys and all of these complex jargon out. But we need to get out of that and try to explain things better. So for engineers, the hardest part is trying to explain to a designer and breaking down the tech stuff. It's hard to explain to a designer why the backend doesn't work. And for designers is understanding the technical lingo. So another example, Lucia, it's one of our Android developers, and at this point we were developing a service for a smart energy meter. And I designed the whole journey of the perfect thing, like installing the meter and setting up the app and pairing. It was the perfect journey. Rainbows and unicorns, like a designer should be. But when I go to her and she goes, nope, can't be done. Why? No, it can't be done, too complex. And at a certain point I understood, like, oh, okay, she's lazy, she doesn't want to code that, she doesn't want to think too much about that, or she's just trying to distract me here because there is a hidden agenda. So what she did was like, okay, how can I explain this in a way that you can understand? So she picked up like the favorite tool of designers, like Post-its, and mapped my whole journey step by step, and then the whole journey that was happening in the back end in a language that I could understand. And then I came to realize that, okay, now I get you why this step is not possible and this step is not possible. But we needed to establish like a common ground of understanding. So she came down to my childish level to explain me a very complex thing. And this is kind of a two-way street. And for me, it's really funny to see a developer or engineer quoting a design process like Post-its or a design tool to explain to a designer. Points of view is more about understanding what is important for us. Why is important to this as an engineer or this as a designer? Engineers don't have a clue why certain things are so important for designers. I think maybe we also don't make an effort to explain that. And for designers, it's hard to understand the structure and the process of an engineer and how they think. Although this is a little bit less techy example, but at this point we were developing a project with a customer, and the PO really wanted to develop that feature. That feature didn't make any sense, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to try it out and test some users around the block, and we did because the target audience was around there. And I came up with the feedback like, look, the feature doesn't make any sense. The users don't want it. Are we going to solve this? No, but I still believe that the feature needs to be there. Like, okay, so I bring the PO, put it in front of the users, and let him do the test. Half an hour later, the PO understood why my point of view was important, why, because he understood that the users actually didn't want that. But I needed to put him in my position for him to understand that. And it's a small thing. Sometimes it's just going to the next room. You just pick up and put them in the situation, in the cold water, and changes a lot. Mindsets. That's how an engineer thinks about designers. They are from Mars. I don't get them. We don't understand them. Why do they do this kind of stuff? During the process of working at Featureize in the IoT project was my first one. Like, we understood that designers do have a hard time with technology, and for designers it's important that we actually have a good knowledge on technology nowadays because it's the new material. I never thought about using beacons or any other fancy technology for my creative process, but nowadays this is the new paper, and designers need to get a little bit more familiar with technical evolution. And engineers, well, they have a hard time with design processes. They are quite allergic on that, or at least that was my experience. I don't want to offend anybody here. I'm not sure how many engineers are in the room. So, a personal story. When I started to work at Featureize, my first project was an IoT project out of the cloud using beacons and mesh networks that will deliver hyperlocal information in a specific physical range. At that point, for me, that's completely tech dark voodoo language that I don't get it. And I was working with Paul in a room for 3 months, and we didn't got along. I couldn't understand the technology and the potential of the technology, and he didn't understood my concepts and what I was trying to say to him. So at a certain point, after 3 months, almost failing in our deliveries, too much swearing and too much fights, I okay, we need to understand what is wrong between us, and we need to get to understand each other. So I started my way, and this is my first day at Featureize, and we have this on the men's room toilet. If this sign was designed by a designer, it wouldn't look like that. But it says, is the light switched on? No. Great. Be careful if you still do your stuff. Is it on? Yes. One of the stalls is locked. Yes. No. It's basically a decision tree model, and with some bug fixes. This for me was a eye opener, like, okay, this is how these guys work. This is how these guys think. This is the mindset. It's very rational. And we designers most of the time are quite all over the place. So during this process of me trying to understand the technology and Paul trying to understand the design processes, we came up with a game. So Paul is a big fan of board games. And we created a set of cards that were covering all the technologies that we were using in this project that would give enough information to a designer to understand what he could do with that technology. So there is like, okay, it's a smart beacon, is a location device, has a range of 100 meters. Then the functions, like relay message between devices, tech specs, and some guiding questions that were relevant for the design process. At this point, we realized there was no really IoT design methodology for designers to design for IoT, and we might be onto something here. So we tested this in a couple of conferences. We understood that we were onto something, but was still not there. So the current set was something like that. It was very useful for the project, but as a methodology, we was not there yet. So with a couple of iterations, we achieved this.
The internet has changed, and so has the way we work. IoT technologies open new possibilities for meaningful digital services. Integrating digital and physical realities to create a seamless user experience is a challenge. We created the IoT Service Kit to help tech professionals ideate and simulate IoT concepts. It's a board game where you build your own IoT service by playing cards like sensors, open data, and connected technology. Multidisciplinary teams with technical, design, and business knowledge use the tool to create connected digital services with validation. The kit is available as an open source project on GitHub. Test it, share it, and show everyone what you've made. And as you know, we love feedback.
So what became like just a tool to solve a relationship problem, or what was a tool for solving a relationship problem, became like a board game that can be useful for you to design IoT services. And it's quite agnostic of where you come from. It's very useful for designing the whole experience and focus on the journey and not being so knowledgeable on technology. We decided to make it open source for a couple of reasons. First, because me and Paul also have like a perspective that IoT should be a little bit more open and not a closed ecosystem. So we wanted to give the tool to the community and also let the community to build on top. That's why it's on GitHub, and people can contribute to that. Also, another reason was that in the design world, there is not such a big culture of open source. So we wanted to be a little bit part of that and trying to push that forward. And we have been having a couple of contributions, and it's nice to see the tool being used by different people in different contexts. So what it turned out, a very love-hate relationship, turned out in a very nice marriage, and we have been traveling all around showing off the kit. And it's really nice to take Paul, for example, to a design conference. Like, designers go crazy. There is an engineer around, and they ask questions to them, like how is the workflow and how is the process. I asked Paul a few weeks back to record a video for a conference just for developers. I included it because I think it's still relevant for the discussion. And it's also a little bit more sympathetic to not talk Paul behind his back. So.
Hi. Well, I'm supposed to be on vacation, but then this Jesus-looking dude called me up and said, I'm supposed to talk to you about the joys of working with designers. Well, timing is one thing, but that aside, let's talk about people. Like, I would really think it comes down, there are different kinds of people. There are people like me who like to tinker with stuff, and that's what I'm good at, but I don't understand people. Then there are designers whose job is a different specialty, and Ricardo really taught me that that is a specialty, and you find a designer who's good, they really have something to teach you. So when you can combine what I do with what someone like he does, is pretty powerful. You shouldn't think that when you're making something, it's about exercising a given piece of technology. It's about serving someone. The biggest realization I had with Ricardo is when he taught me that you should really start from a human problem worth solving and work backwards towards the technology. Of course, you both need to be there. The most important thing is to sit down next to each other, become friends, have fun with the journey, tease each other a bit, and it can be quite a pleasant experience. You shouldn't hang out with just clones of yourself. You should find people who wear thick-rimmed glasses or whatever they do, and have fun. So, greetings from Tennessee. Bye.
That was Paul. Yeah. So, I want to move on a little bit to the takeaways of all of these stories. And the solutions most of the time are rather simple and quite human, to be honest. Respect is about losing our ego, and is about like really let it go. And we designers can be very egoistic and can have like egos with the size of a football stadium and can behave sometimes a lot like assholes. So I think we need to get out of our own egos to try to actually listen to people. And it's not listen to the developer or the designer in front of you, but listen to this person who comes from a different perspective than yours and has something to put on the table. And that's active listening. Lingo, it's more about finding a common language that works. It's more like team specific most of the time. It's, for example, Lucia used these post-its. Paul constantly talks with me with Harry Potter metaphors. I don't like Harry Potter, but actually it works. So it's kind of trying to find your own mechanisms to to communicate. And the IoT kit was a mechanism for us to communicate, but then it became a product. Mindsets, it's about empathy. I could easily not having the relationship I have with this engineer, but we did because we tried to understand each other. We went for drinks. We tried to understand where do we come from, why do you think like that, and challenging. As designers, empathy, it's on the core of our skills, and that's what we do with our users, but we often forget also to be empathetic with our teams and with our teammates. This one I cannot help, sorry. Just buy some good headphones. And my main message here is that we are all contributing to a more connected world. We are all contributing in a way or another to a world that we want to live in and for service that we want to use, being more ethical or being more efficient, but we are contributing for that world. And if this collaboration between these two parts doesn't work, the future doesn't sound too bright. So we just need to remember that we are on this together and we are equal parts of constructing this connected world that we talk and we work hard for it. Thank you.